only an asshole doesn't like pineapple. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And vaya con dias, amigo. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film that used to be a TV show but now is on a streaming service in your living room, El Camino.
Wait, no, the film never used to be a TV show. The TV show used to be a TV show.
used to be a TV show. This is the sequel/ending to the TV show. Yeah.
Well, no,
there's a lot of different ways you can look at this.
There's a lot of TV shows that have been turned into movies.
Yeah.
Have you got any? I mean, like the X-Files, South Park, The Simpsons.
I know there's a bunch.
Veronica Mars,
Firefly. Yeah.
Is there anything that
Well, first of all, hello, Shahir. Hey. Hello, audience. Hello, everyone.
We're not interested.
We are interested. What do you mean?
Well, okay, wait. Sidetrack.
Yeah.
Sidetrack. I gotta get some little personal info here.
Okay, sure. Shoot.
Do you listen to podcasts at normal speed?
Yeah. What kind of asshole doesn't listen to podcasts at normal speed? I'm kidding. If you listeners are listening to us sped up, wow, what do I sound like sped up?
I listen to you sped up.
What is it?
When I'm doing podcast reviews, like quote QCs of our episodes, I listen to us.
You do QCs of the episodes?
Of course I do.
Weird. I do them, but I edit them. So.
Well, but I do them at 3 times the speed. So we sound like little chipmunks. But no, I listen to discussion podcasts, news podcasts, anything that's not produced where pacing is critical.
Oh, I think pacing for us is very critical.
You think so?
Yeah.
Right now, pacing is critical?
Well, I think...
We're going to speed right up now, and then slow right down.
No,
and then pace
those were
right
both
up,
the same speed.
and then slow right
up. Okay.
And then pick it right up. And then pick it right up. Okay, go. Okay, go. No, but the reason I asked that question is Netflix is currently, as of today, trialing an option where you could watch movies at different speeds.
Weird.
Yeah. And to which I say, no, thank you. Not because I don't think it's an interesting idea, and it's certainly. Look, I'll be completely honest. If one of the headlines was Netflix are trialing optional speeds for serial killers, people who are clearly not well, and I was like, raised my hand, and I was like, I sir, am one of those people. No, I do. I listen to podcasts at double speed, and I watch YouTube videos at double speed.
You are a weirdo.
I like YouTube videos, definitely, without a doubt. And it's for the exact reason to bring this into a meta conversation right now of what it is we're doing, which is like, for example, tutorial videos or videos where I'm just trying to get information really quickly.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear the host kind of like, hey, it's your boy, Shahir Dowd, bringing you another episode about the only podcast about movies where you can reach us at yada, yada.
But that's what we do every week.
That is what we do every week. But and what I'm saying is, when I want to watch a tutorial or get some information and it's not a podcast or show that I follow, I just want to skip past all of that stuff really quick.
Yeah, but what I do is I just click to it. I don't speed through to get
even
there.
The content. Like, so I watch, one of my things is I'm a motion graphics designer, is I watch motion graphics tutorials in triple speed.
Well, okay, but like a lot of times those tutorials themselves are doing exactly what you said, doing like 4 minutes of preamble to get there. But what I do is I just click past the 4 minutes of preamble and watch it.
But even the content, I will watch it at double or triple speed, just because, I want to just get the essence of what's being said really quickly. I want to understand exactly what's being said very quickly and then move on.
Maybe I just can't register the information, or it doesn't maintain as easily when listened to in that manner, because I don't do it. And believe me, I would love to save the time.
Do you know why? I think it's a skill I learned as a video editor at Television New Zealand. We would get, say a 10-minute clip from the field, and we'd have to cut it down to 30 seconds, and we'd have maybe 20 minutes to do it. And so I would just speed through it really quickly. I got, and also there was a really weird skill that I learned, which is how to listen to footage backwards. So I can
do that to get timing and stuff down.
Yeah, so I can play something backwards and know what was being said and find the end point.
I can do that.
And then play it. I'd watch the clip really quickly, speed through it very, very quickly. So there was just kind of this thing that I learned.
So here's I guess the disconnect for me. I can do all of those things you're talking about from an editing perspective. Like if I'm going through footage or trying to get things done in a timely manner, I can 100% listen to double, triple speed to get to a point. In fact, when I'm even editing this, I listen to bits of it in that way because I need to get to a point at a quickly amount of time. I don't think that I have ever, for leisure or information beyond something I am creating, listened to something at a multiplier of speed, because I want to basically whether or not, and this, look, I'm not saying that every video that teaches you how to do something on YouTube is as thought out and should be not listened to at that double speed, but like I do think there is something with the intent of what is being created and the discussion that is happening, etc.
I just find with discussion podcasts in particular, like ours, that I just want to get through it quickly. I just
people out there,
yeah.
write us in. Let us know what speed you listen to us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or onlymoviepod on Twitter.
And do we sound better or worse?
I mean, they won't know because they only listen at that one speed.
No,
Is it a varying speed?
People can do multiple things.
Does it slip? Like do you start? Like, wouldn't it be great if like it started at normal speed, but then out on an actual like curve, it sped up?
You know, if the iPhone still had the wheel.
Oh, remember the wheel? The iPhone didn't. The
iPod did. If the iPod still had the wheel, you could like speed it up and play, and slow it down just like you can with it.
It made clicky noises. It was fun.
Other news this week that I thought was interesting: the Joker is the highest-rated R-rated movie, surpassing Deadpool.
Well, it was a good run, Ryan Reynolds. I saw that they did do a fun little poster to them, and Ryan Reynolds posted it, and it said like it's like, hey, fuck you or something, and it was like that was like the nice thing or whatever, and then Ryan Reynolds posted and it said from, and then all the different characters like Deadpool, Pennywise, like all these different R-rated characters, and he wrote like, yeah, we congratulate each other a little differently over here, like
on the dark side, on the R side.
I mean, sure,
it's a thing. If you've seen it more than one time, let us know at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod.
Or
especially
don't.
if you're imagining your neighbors or things like that.
Or don't
hit us up. You're done with the Joker?
I think I'm done with the Joker.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you'd like to, please write us in. If it's about Joker, I'm probably not going to read it at this point.
Whoa, wow.
Well, no, that's not true. I will read it. That's a mean thing to say. I take that back. I just don't know if I'll, depending on.
Will you read it at double speed?
Yeah, I'll read it. I promise to read it at double speed. No, I just think I've said everything. People, you know what it is?
Yeah.
When you host a movie podcast, as prevalent as the only one you're listening to, people in your purview in your life are consistently asking you about films, and while I normally like that, the only questions I've gotten about any films in the last month or so has been my take on Joker, and I am sick of talking about it because there's not that much to talk about. We did 2 episodes on it, and it was very fun. I liked the actual things. I feel like we put it to bed in that. Thing. We tucked it in.
Gave it some milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bring on...
Put the pillow over its face.
Bring on Robert Pattinson's Batman, you cowards.
Well, speaking of...
Kravitz is going to be Catwoman.
Yeah.
I'm very pumped for that.
Cool.
I think it's going to be very, very good. And...
I like the idea Matt Reeves is doing it. I like the idea. I'm getting into the sort of Spider-Man conundrum that I had with Spider-Man, which is like, I hope you do something interesting with this because I don't really need another Batman movie in my life.
Yeah, same.
And I'm a big Batman fan.
I just like Robert Pattinson. I think he's gonna transcend.
He's gonna transcend. He's gonna jump out of the suit.
Yeah.
He's gonna surpass the suit.
Yeah.
Do you think he will be the definitive Batman?
I think he'll be the suit.
He will be the suit.
No, I think he's a great actor. I think he'll bring something at least hopefully interesting to it from a younger perspective.
Okay, quick 1-sentence answer. Who is the definitive Batman for you?
Oh, Kevin Conroy.
Oh, good answer. Good answer. Good answer. Okay.
I mean, 100%. There's no one else as iconic in that role.
That is a very good answer. That would make me reconsider my answer.
What is your answer?
Christian Bale.
Because
and my only reasoning is he's in the best movies. He's supported by the best movies.
I am a sucker for Keaton.
Yeah, Keaton's great. Keaton's great.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
And those movies are great. I like the Burton Keaton collab. Anyway, moving on. No more Batman news. I did a Twitter poll to ask about the next 4 movies that we're most likely going to be doing.
Oh, good. Well, so obviously El Camino won.
El Camino came in. Did last, and which is why we're doing it this week.
What? We have some scheduling coming up.
We have some scheduling issues. So yes, we will. I did preface this Twitter poll with a we will probably be doing all of these at some point. It's just a case of which ones are you most excited for, and people are most excited for Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. Which
nice.
I am super. Well, no. Let me put it this way. I'm excited because it's Bong Joon-ho. I have avoided every possible piece of information about this movie.
Actually, hard same for once in my life. I did that. But then also, Lighthouse is out, and also Jojo Rabbit. Where's the other ones?
These are the other two on our poll, which was The Lighthouse and Jojo Rabbit and El Camino. Jojo Rabbit was leading for a long time. It was neck and neck between Parasite and Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit came in, slipped to number 2.
Hot tea coming at you real hot, real fast. You ready for this?
Okay.
I like Twitter polls. I think they're super fun, and if you put a Twitter poll up, I will always vote on it.
Well, it's like the least commitment of effort, right?
It's the best. I love it so much. I do it for some of the streams on Extra Credits, and I love that you're doing it on this one. It's just nice because it is. We're not asking too much of your time, or you're not asking too much of mine when this is interaction, but like. There's fun little things to choose. I don't know.
How can we make this more complicated for people? How can we make it more of an investment of their time?
No, I want less.
Oh, wow.
It's the equivalent of chiming in at double speed.
There you go. That's fair. I'll buy that. We also got a couple of emails in, and all emails on Gemini Man this week, including a voicemail from Zachary.
Is it double speed?
Should we play it back at double speed?
No.
Oh, let's do that.
No.
Let's play back at double speed.
Gemini Man.
Here we go. Here's Zach chiming in on Gemini Man.
Hey guys, just listened to the Gemini Man review. I thought it was really good. Will was a great guest. You guys had a really interesting conversation, and I loved listening to it. In terms of Gemini Man itself, I did not like the movie one bit. The dialogue was really bad, and I just couldn't take it. It's the only time I've ever walked out of a movie theater, which is unfortunate. I didn't actually make it to any of the major fight scenes with the Fresh Prince versus Will Smith, but I found that I also was not the only one. There were other people that were walking out of the movie with me and in other showings, so I was not the only person, and I wanted to ask you guys if you had any comment on that. Thanks again for what you guys do. Have a great night.
So Gemini Man spawned Zach to leave.
Yeah, first time ever.
Wow. Zachary, I've never walked out of a movie. I don't think.
Ever. What? Okay. Let's broaden the horizon a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you turned off a movie at home?
Yes.
Can you recall what one might?
It was Hangover 3.
Ooh, Todd, another Joker hot take. Right there.
Hot take? No, not just a Joker. Yeah, I thought Hangover 3 was so atrocious. I was watching it, and it's the only time I can remember just being like, there were so many other things I could do with my time. Like, I was just like, why am I watching this? This is not enjoyable.
Wow.
However, I have sat through plenty of films that I have had that same thought, but because I am at the theater and because I plunked my hard-earned American ducats down, I stuck it through.
Okay.
So in a way, I kind of admire Zach for walking out of a film he did not like.
Yeah. Although if he paid the money for the high frame rate and walked out,
I mean, at that point, I would. I mean, basically, what I did was I turned it into like a educational thing where I was trying to like check out technical stuff as opposed to the film itself, because the film itself obviously did not hold narrative interest water.
Yeah, narrative interest water. As far as narrative interest water go, the movie has not done well theatrically, pulling in a domestic gross of 38 million and an international gross of 83 million, bringing it to a worldwide total of 122 against 138 budget, not including marketing. This is a very expensive
marketing budget.
Yeah, we don't know what the marketing budget for that film is. And James Cameron has come out and spoken that he doesn't think HFR is really all that either, which is funny because he's kind of the guy. He's kind of the HFR guy. Well, he's kind of the 3D guy who spoke about the potential for HFR, and now it looks like he the way he speaks about it, it's going to be a tool set at some point. Personally, only movie I've ever walked out on, and it's not because I wanted to. But because this is when I was 16 years old, a bunch of friends went to a movie, opening night on a Friday. We ended up being the only people in the theater, and the movie was Tombstone, the Val Kilmer film. Yeah,
sure.
And Kurt Russell. And I've always wanted to go back and watch it, but
You've never gone back and watched Tombstone?
I haven't watched
Wait,
it.
so why did you leave the theater?
It was like 12 rowdy teenagers in a movie, and we were by ourselves. And, nobody was watching the movie.
So you just left.
So we just left. But I have always wanted to go back and watch the movie, but I have not done so yet.
I like Tombstone too.
Yeah, I've heard Tombstone is excellent. I hear the final shootout is superb.
I think as far as like if that's, I mean, it's everyone's own personal choice whether or not they want to do that or not. I think, to be honest, you've spent your money. You can do whatever you want so long as it's not interrupting anyone else who's spent their money on the experience. And if that thing that you want, Zach, is to leave that damn movie because it's just infuriating you or boring you enough, then yeah, go, more
I think
power
in
to
this
you.
case, as much as I am not a person who likes to walk out of movies, I don't think, Zach, you missed out on anything.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
you will not have a Shahir Tombstone situation.
Yeah, where I'm like, I want to go back and watch that movie.
No, in 20 years,
Yeah.
you will not go back and be like,
I wish
if
it's-
only I had stayed through the middle portion of Gemini Man.
Fun story with Zach. Zach has written to us before and has informed us that he is going to be starting his own podcast called The Screenwriter's Nightmare.
But he started it, didn't he?
He did start
Yeah.
it the other night.
I heard it.
Based off of one of our episodes. He maybe I'm taking too much credit here, but he did tweet us.
Shahir is saying that everything you've done, Zach, is based on him.
But he did tweet us about this, and I really love this. He tweeted that based off of our review of See You Yesterday.
Yep.
That he decided to watch the movie. He loved it so much that he decided it was time to start his podcast. It was excellent. I retweeted it, and I tagged the director Stefan Bristol in the retweet, and Stefan Bristol replied to Zach
Awesome.
and saying thank you for reviewing the film, which I thought was just wonderful. I think the podcast is wonderful. It's called The Screenwriter's Nightmare. Please check it out.
Yes.
From listener Zach, and we'll take those royalty checks in the mail. Thank you.
You have to send them through the transdimensional gateway, though, because we are the only one, the only podcast
well,
about
he's talking
movies.
about screenwriters, maybe, I guess so.
That's a multiverse stretch here, but Zach, congratulations on the podcast. Everyone should please go check that out. Next up, we have Jacob writing in.
Yep.
More Gemini Man.
More Gemini Man.
More Gemini Man. Jacob says, does the artist or critic need to care about the most prevalent form of consumption of artistic work, or only the intended form? I thought your small discussion on this was quite interesting. That was a question from Red, friend of the show, Red Charzan, on Gemini Man podcast. Quite interesting, especially with how quickly Shahir seems to dismiss being concerned with the most prevalent form of consumption. I actually love it when artists try to give tips about how to consume their art. I know some more scary/horror-oriented video games help you adjust the screen so that the visibility of objects in the game are as intended, and they encourage you to play with the lights off and headphones. I would never have done that if not prompted, but boy does it change things, a la Amnesia, The Darkness Descent. That's actually a very great game. Also, fantastic game. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice has binaural audio, by the way. This is me talking, not Jacob. But to chime in, basically it wants you to play with headphones because the character is schizophrenic in the game, and you hear voices depending on what's going on, depending on which thing, and it's very
cool.
effective.
Very cool.
Jacob continues. And I think that similar things can be done with movies. I think some sort of advice about how to watch Roma on Netflix could have done a lot of good. Just a note saying that the director encourages you to search for the small, beautiful details within the dwelling shots you are about to witness, etc. I think that's very interesting, Jacob.
So, yeah, and just to break it down, I think just to break down some terms here, the prevalent form of consumption versus the intended form. In the case of Gemini Man, the prevalent form would be most people will see it in 24 frames per second, or maybe 60 frames, since there are only 14 theaters in the United States that were playing it at 120 frames. And the intended form is obviously the 120 frames per second, 4K, 3D, which is only playing in one theater in the world.
Yeah, we didn't actually even see it in its intended form.
Yeah, no, and I think what Jacob points to is an interesting point there, which is that, should we care about the way most people are going to see it? Now, I prefer to, I think the problem there is that it's impossible to determine how people are going to see it. Some people are going to see it on a cell phone. Some people are going to watch it, some people are going to watch it on DVD. Some people are going to watch it on Blu-ray. I think it's just difficult to decipher exactly how it's going to be intended. There's an interesting video, though, which someone compared going to see the film in 24 frames per second and seeing it in 120 frames per second. And the first thing that they said was all the dramatic scenes worked 100% better. Like scenes that were like clunky as 120 frames per second were suddenly like okay and passable as 24 frames per second.
Huh.
So, like Will Smith being flirty was kind of like weird at 120 frames per second, but in 24 frames it was like, okay, this is a movie thing. So I think that's a really interesting, particularly in this case, where the disparity between how it is intended to be seen versus how it can be seen is so wide. But yeah, I think the only thing you can do though as a reviewer, unless you see it in both formats, which a lot of reviewers did do, is talk about the way you saw it and the way that it was hopefully intended to be seen.
I don't have a problem too with, and I actually really like. Sort of what Jacob is suggesting, where if a filmmaker suggests more optimal ways, or even with video games, etc., of experiencing the thing, like we meant this to be this. So if you can, please enjoy it in this particular way. However, but like what I don't want is people being like, only see my movie in theaters, and it's like, well, I mean, okay.
Like you put up such an interesting straw man there. You seem so angry.
Well, no. So what I was saying, I was sorry. I was being an old man yelling at a cloud. When
imaginary old man yelling at a cloud.
Well, no. Like even Christopher Nolan has said a couple things in the past about like. Although I guess maybe you know what. To be fair, I don't know how adamant they are because they were in articles and you can't really tell. So maybe I'm putting my own sort of spin on that. If it is sort of in that vein that Jacob's setting up, like, oh well, like this is really meant to be like this. You know, as long as the sentiment isn't. You should only watch this thing in this way. I
don't think anyone would say that realistically.
Okay.
Like any reasonable human being would say that. I went and saw. I think I talked about this on the podcast. I went and saw David Fincher's film Seven at the London at the BFI. Yeah, I watched it on myself. Actually, I was on the subway this week. I did watch someone. I did see someone watching Avengers Endgame on their cell phone,
as it was intended.
As it was intended to be. But I went and saw David Fincher's Seven at the BFI in London last year or the year before, and they had a special print that had the silver nitrate retention thing that was very important to the prints of Seven, which you can only get as a 35mm print. They had to find it from the archive, and they presented with it a letter that David Fincher had sent on behalf of his production company to every distributor and every theater that accompanied the print, and it was a fairly detailed letter outlining exactly what light level, what foot lamberts the projector should be set at in order to optimally view this. And I think Alfred Hitchcock has had famously was probably more of a marketing gimmick where you couldn't enter the theater after the film had started playing in terms of Psycho. I think filmmakers do this all the time. It happens all the time. And I think as far as us as critics go and watchers of films, we should. For me, I think it's interesting to try and watch the film as the filmmaker intended. It's not always possible. You might have to watch Gemini Man on a cell phone, and maybe it's better.
Wow, you think Gemini Man's better on a cell phone? Maybe.
One more email about Gemini Man before we move on to El Camino, and that is from Stephen in New Zealand. I actually think the other choices other than HFR impact how the film looks. The high frame rate is just exaggerating those choices. I think Matt's point about the lens size in 3D was spot on, although in my own experience of shooting with 3D is limited. I feel matching a normal person's field of view, i.e. the magical 28mm lens, feels better for an audience in 3D. Essentially what you were talking about in that episode was that HFR was really interesting, but only in shots where it kind of was an extension of the perspective you were experiencing in the theater in relation to the theater, in relation to the screen. Anyway, you guys are right. None of it matters since it doesn't serve the story, which may be the final word. I actually did. I think your comment about the way the film jumps, it basically keeps the same language of editing, except for one scene. That we're sort of used to with film, and maybe the language of editing needed to change as much as and someone asked me this on Twitter and said, well, which filmmaker or which kind of film would you want to see in HFR? And the only answer I could think of that I thought might be interesting was Roy Andersson, who made A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting Existence. Which is a film that's very still. It's a very highly detailed image that stays on screen for long periods of time. I think that in HFR might be interesting. Maybe.
And also, no, I was about to sort of make a weird stretch, but I'd be interested to see it, but not to have anyone spend money to do it.
What's that?
Hateful Eight. Sort of like that sort of like the wide ass lens in the small ass space. Not saying Quentin Tarantino, I want to do something like this, but like,
and he is the last person who'd want to.
I know, but like something like that where it does sort of set it up as a bit more of a diorama. Like again, going back to Pigeon.
It's like you're watching a play.
Anyway, yeah.
But we're not talking about theater this week. We're talking about TV at the movies.
TV.
or on Netflix, which could probably be in your home. Although this film did play in theaters this week.
Really?
It did. Yeah, it did have a
well, that's nice.
a theatrical experience.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? And Aaron Paul attended a couple of screenings at the Alamo Drafthouse in Los Angeles.
Well,
Why
that's
not?
nice. I like it.
Well, let me just back up here for a second. Do you like Breaking Bad? Yeah, were you? Mr. Crow, were you into Breaking Bad?
You're saying with the drugs and the crystal meth and the blue and the things, and I'm the one who knocks. Yeah, I like Breaking Bad quite a bit. I think I didn't realize how much I missed Breaking Bad until I watched the catch up of this season and the music. The Breaking Bad theme song,
Is it Dave Porter, who's the musician?
That hit at the end of it, and I was like, oh, like I got all the feels back. I really like Breaking Bad. I did come to it a little bit late, though I did. It was one of those experiences where I kind of caught up to its live
right
thing. So
I
the
think,
first
I think
two
a lot
or
of
three
people did
seasons.
that. Yeah. And that was largely predicated by the fact that Netflix purchased the show and put it up so you could watch every season before the season was airing on AMC. So I think it was one of the first instances where
Really? It did that?
Yeah, Netflix bought the show and then they would play the season before before AMC was playing this. So it was a nice little partnership they had going on there, almost like a Jesse and Mr. White and Jesse Pinkman kind of scenario. I'm not sure who was who in that situation.
Ooh, I think probably AMC.
I think AMC is Mr. White.
Yeah,
and Netflix is Jesse Pinkman.
At that point,
and now Jesse Pinkman is out on his own.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. As far as I love the show, I absolutely love the show. I think the show is nearly pitch perfect. In terms of it. It starts strong, gets better and better with every season, ends strong as well.
So I have a question though.
Sure.
For you. How do you feel in general
about generals? Okay.
About the sort of show that is done getting a film adaptation, not even adaptation, continuation. How do you feel? Do you have any thoughts about that? En masse, or is it a specific this one works, this one doesn't? It's just another tool in a toolbox.
I think it's probably the what you just said.
Yeah.
There's obviously plenty of examples, and the example that I think would be of interest for listeners of this podcast would be the X-Files movies, where the show finished and then they brought out two movies. And the reason that's of interest is that Vince Gilligan was a writer on the X-Files, and so I think it was an interesting continuation of his work. And the X-Files movies weren't hugely successful. Probably the most successful example of this is Star Trek. Star Trek, the movies, based off the series, kind of spawned its own life, and many sequels and reboots to follow.
Of course,
unsuccessful examples would be the A-Team. For example, the Joe Carnahan film, which was not a huge hit off the back of the.
I guess
the
it
show.
is technically a continuation.
Well, it's but
it's really not because of the time period.
Well, it's not the same cast, which is the difference.
Well, now we're so I'm not talking about that or 21 Jump Street or these properties that Charlie's Angels. I'm not talking about that sort of thing.
You're talking about where the
show continues. I'm talking about your Sex and the Cities, your Entourages,
The Simpsons.
The Simpsons. And Star Trek does fit into that.
Yeah, it's true, because they used the original cast in the first movie.
And it's the continuation is of the thing.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing, and I think the fascinating question mark for filmmakers in this context is, how has your medium changed when you've gone from episodic television to single event movies? And I think that's a fascinating question, which will come into play with El Camino quite a lot.
Yeah.
To come back to the sort of television question of Breaking Bad, I think Breaking Bad is to me, I think, one of the top 3 television shows of all time.
Sure.
My favorite TV show that I still think kind of is the best show I've ever seen still, and I've watched it all the way through 3 times, is The Wire. I think The Wire...
You and a lot of people.
Yeah, The Wire is without a doubt still the best television show I think I've ever seen. Followed and I'm not sure where... Breaking Bad is probably number 2.
Huh.
And number 3 would probably be Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That would be my top 3. Kind of in that vein. Do you
I don't really have a top 3. That'd be really hard.
It's very loose. Obviously.
I mean, Buffy and Angel, although I'm worried to go back and watch them at this point, but they were so formulative for me in the way that I look at story and structure and the way Joss Whedon did it.
Yeah.
So that's up there. Cowboy Bebop, I still think, is a pinnacle of visual narrative storytelling.
Yeah.
Like it gives you everything you need, no fat on it whatsoever. And when it decides to go all in on like relishing a moment or a shot, like it does it.
Right.
And you can see that not only in content, but also sort of craftsmanship of the frames because it's animated.
Okay.
So that's one of my big ones. I think probably another one I'd bring up too, it really is Lost.
Lost is great.
Lost, I mean, obviously sort of ushered in along with Breaking Bad, along with Mad Men.
That golden age of television.
Yeah. And you know what? The farther I get away from Lost's ending, even though I didn't mind it at the time, the more I'm like, yeah, this is a good ending for me. It makes sense with what the show was doing. It was building to that point. People were mad, I think, that they figured it out early.
Yeah.
And that they just did that thing. Whereas, you know what the alternate of that is? It's Game of Thrones season 8.
Right.
Like when nothing is set up and then you just flip the fucking 180 switch. So like, I don't know. Lost,
I mean, you could argue that the ending of Battlestar Galactica.
I haven't seen all of Battlestar Galactica.
The finale of Battlestar Galactica, the final season, gets a little bit weird.
A loopy?
A little loopy, but kind of in an interesting way.
But you know what's interesting?
Okay, what is interesting?
All of the things that we've listed, and I don't know if this is a prerequisite to have a favorite television show, has ended. They have definitive endings.
Of all the TV shows we're talking about.
Well, no, I'm saying, like, for instance, the ones we just called our favorites, they are not currently still going. They are not, like, narratives that are continuing.
Well, Breaking Bad does have Better Call Saul.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, like, the actual story of the thing. That's one character. That's a spin-off. That's like Joni Loves Chachi into Happy Days. Like
The Six in the City and the Carrie Diaries.
Yeah, oh god.
There you go.
Oh boy. So I don't know. I'm fine with them doing continuation stories, especially if there's like a
More
poor
story.
ending or something got cut. Like for instance, in Firefly into Serenity. Like Serenity,
Yeah.
the film tied up the universe in one final adventure for these characters that I got unjustly, in my opinion, canceled too early, and then we
Right.
got to have a final thing. And sure, there could be more stories to be told, but I was happy with the ending.
So you'd be happy with Community coming back for what was it, 6 seasons in a movie? That's what they were trying to do. 5 seasons.
Yeah,
in
or
a movie?
something like that.
Yeah.
I think that with Breaking Bad, while Walter White's story definitely had a definitive ending, though he did kind of become a little Batman-esque by the end of it.
Wait, okay, we should say this up front right now. We're gonna spoil Breaking Bad the TV show, and we're gonna spoil Breaking Bad we're gonna spoil El Camino the movie. I have not seen Better Call Saul. I've seen season 1 of Better Call Saul.
I have not seen any of it. So,
but we're just gonna say this right away because when you said he kind of became Batman, I also said he also kind of died.
yeah,
So I was gonna-
but
that's the
that's
reason
what
I
would
said-
happen with Batman in real life.
He became Batman in season 1, though.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You remember
No.
he was a superhero chemistry guy. Remember when he went to Tuco's lab
No, he made-
and he threw an explosive chemical.
Making one gadget does not make you Batman.
Hold up. So we were with a bunch of chemists when we watched that episode live, and every chemist in the room was so excited because it was scientifically accurate, and they were like, "We've got a chemist superhero right here."
Yeah, who turned out to be the villain, like all No,
Yeah, like all chemists. Yeah.
But no, what I mean when he turned into Batman by the end, like there were scenes where he would just appear and disappear, like he was just like there, and then afterward, someone would like do the thing where Batman or like the person Batman's talking to turns their
Wait,
head.
you're talking about Batman or Breaking Bad? Right
I'm talking about Breaking Bad,
Right.
Breaking Bad, man.
I mean, look, he's the one who knocks.
Yeah,
You think that of
whatever.
me? I am the one who knocks.
What I'm saying is they played it fast and loose with Walter White's maneuverability.
So this is what I want to say about Breaking Bad. So when I sat down to watch El Camino, my parents-in-law are staying with us right now, and they were like, "Oh, what is this you're watching?" And I was like, it's a continuation of Breaking Bad." And they're like, "What's Breaking Bad?" And I was like, "Hold up." I turned the lights back on. I was like, there was like a record skip.
What the fuck you just say?
Excuse me, did you say you don't know what Breaking Bad is? And they were like, "No, we don't. I've never seen that show." And I was like, "Okay, here we go." And I was like, literally,
You sat him down. You played the entire series.
I was like, "Your 3 weeks are now booked. Your next 3 weeks are completely booked right now." And so they started watching season 1 of Breaking Bad, and I've been watching it with them. And it's what I think is really fascinating and the reason why Breaking Bad works so well is that, you know, like the pitch for Breaking Bad is, I think Vince Gilligan's pitch for Breaking Bad was, what happens if Mr. Rogers turns into Scarface? That was his entire pitch for Breaking Bad. And it's really interesting to see how season 1 is the story of a man up against the odds trying to like figure out his life and do something good. Season 2, which opens with that like amazing sequence where the teddy bear falls out of, or, you know, like we're sort of panning across this like explosion and it's the teddy bear, is where the show kind of realizes that the audience is all in on this character and we can now go nuts with this. And it becomes bigger than life. Like in season 1 to me felt like it was very like, it was extreme, but it was very much about a real man. But season 2 was like, now we're making art about, you know, like the palette gets bigger. We start introducing like the time lapses in an interesting way. The visual language of the show gets bigger and broader, and they start doing really fascinating things with this character. And I think the thing that was sort of most compelling for me is they slow the show right down. Like at points, you know, like they have those amazing bottle episodes where they're stuck inside the lab and they're still compelling as part of the entire show. You know, like Lost, I think, got into this thing where they were like trying to just add things on top of things towards the end. Season 5 of Breaking Bad is actually pretty slow and it's very methodical and meticulous about like process. But the show kind of just slows down after season 1.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know why, but I think once they'd established who Walt was, who Jesse Pinkman was. Remember, Jesse Pinkman wasn't supposed to survive season 1.
I know.
He was supposed to die at the end of season 1. And they liked Aaron Paul so much and they liked where the character was going that they decided to keep him alive.
Bitch.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. And so I think there's a thing with Breaking Bad where it's always been in sync perfectly with its audience. You know, like Lost, I think, kind of fell out with its audience at some point. Game of Thrones certainly fell out with its audience.
Yeah.
The final season of The Wire didn't play very well.
Sopranos was divisive at the end.
Yeah, you know, like whereas Breaking Bad, I think, is always perfectly in sync and kind of managing to strike that balance exactly of being fan service, but also like well aware of what its characters are capable of.
I'm going to say something, and I don't know if it actually works.
Okay.
But I think there's a difference between fan service and servicing your fans. Fan service, I
The
think.
second one sounds like something you'd get at a brothel.
Yeah, but it's not. Yes, I'll take the servicing of my fan, please.
Or an air conditioning.
Yeah. Or an air, yeah. Because fan service is you actively being like, oh, this is what they want. This is exactly, yes, I'm going to give them whatever. But servicing your fans is more of a, like, you are just in sync with the people that you are making the show for. You are not changing what you are making, but you have tapped into something in a cultural zeitgeist or with a group of people that is resonant.
Yeah.
And I think that Breaking Bad 100% is in that category of servicing the fans.
Right.
Because you're right, it really, you know, hit a vein, no pun intended, about what it meant to be a good guy versus a bad guy. And then like it was weird because like everyone knew where Walter came from, and then it, you know, to the turn Mr. Rogers into Scarface sort of thing. Everybody does have dark thoughts. Everybody does have that moment where like life's pushing you to the edge and you wonder like what you're going to do. You know, like there's moments, and then the catharsis of watching an every man and every person kind of fall from grace, realizing that like, oh man, like that's a thing that could happen to anybody depending. It's almost like it's almost like what Joker thought it was trying to say in The Killing Joke.
Right.
Or thought that he was trying to say. So
Right.
My point is, Breaking Bad, super good.
El Camino.
El Camino, fine. So okay. This is where it's good, I think. I was not happy with how they sort of used Jesse Pinkman at the end of the series and at the end of the show. Like the end of the show was like fine and whatever, but like it always felt to me like Jesse kind of got a little bit of the shaft near the end, and I know that was a narrative reason.
Right.
But to have him stick around for so long and have that sort of, you know, just waste away sort of bits.
Yeah.
Always felt that was the one very minor sour note to me. So when I heard this was coming out and it was going to pick up right where it left off, and like it made sense because that's the car he stole when he left and all that jazz.
Right.
was very, very excited. This did feel like 2 episodes of Breaking Bad put back to back, which is fine.
Right.
And I liked watching Jesse try to, in a post-Walter White world, figure out what the hell he's going to do and have a goal and eventually, we mentioned about spoilers to it, but like how he goes about trying to achieve that goal.
Because Jesse is always, you seem to be, I think the show sets it up so that Jesse believes he is a victim of circumstance. I mean, Jesse makes choices throughout the show, but Jesse is often the one put upon by, primarily by Walter White, and then eventually by Nazis. Of course. But Jesse has always been kind of the somewhat innocent who has been swept up in a sea of circumstance that is not of his own making, which is. I think the show has actually been pretty good at balancing that out, which is that you do the show is actually very, very good at like recognizing that these are amoral people, and ultimately the choices that they make is what leads them into the positions they are. And the thing that's beautiful about Breaking Bad is, to me, it's like that final line, which was that I think Skylar says to Walter, if you say this was for your family, you did it for the family one more time, I swear to God. And he said, I did it for me. I liked it. Is that like one line where it's just like, oh yeah, this is what the show really knows it's about. So you were kind of mixed on the movie.
So I thought that the first 2/3 to 3/4 was really great. I was engaged. But I often have an issue when it's sort of like a continuation like this. I'm like, am I engaged because I have such a history with the character? I kept asking myself, like, would this be as enjoyable if it was just sort of, if it had like, let's even say like an 80s movie-esque sort of like after a drug deal gone wrong, like a thing, like a sort of like
if you were
set
just
up
coming
in the
into
beginning.
this cold.
But not only just coming into this specific movie cold, but what if this movie was designed for you to come in cold? Meaning that like this is a young man who is trapped by a gang of people that has escaped, but now is on the run for a crime that he sort of committed, right?
Right.
Does it stand on its own 2 legs? I don't know, but the more I watched it, and the more we even talked about this a little bit too, right, when we started this episode, about like intended ways to view a thing. Right. This is not a technical like way to view this thing, but it is there are prerequisites to watching this thing, and it's very clear about that.
Right.
So after a while, I stopped asking myself, would it be enjoyable if I didn't, love Breaking Bad and all the characters? And what I started asking myself more was, why does this exist? I think it did definitely start from a place of like, I think it started from, we love Breaking Bad. I would love to do something new with Breaking Bad. Jesse did get away. Jesse kind of didn't have a ton nearing that last season or whatever, like as much as the other characters, like, because they were sort of finishing up Walter White's arc. Why don't we do one more ride, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But by the end of it, it had wrapped up all of its interesting bits, and then there was just like a few flashbacks extra.
Right.
I felt. Namely, there is a Walter White flashback, because of course there is. I thought that the fact that there was a Walter White flashback, I felt it was completely inconsequential. Like the other flashbacks seemed to matter.
The flashback at the end.
Yeah, when they're in the diner.
Okay. No. But the other flashback that happens in the show.
Yeah,
there's three or four.
There's 4, I think.
Yeah.
But the one at the beginning with Mike talks about like going to Alaska, sort of sets that up. That's fine.
Yeah.
The one with Kristen Ritter, who I can never remember her character's name, but that makes sense to me, because that was someone whom he loved and lost early on in the show due to Walter.
It's debatable.
Didn't Walter?
No, he just didn't do anything when she was choking.
Okay. Whatever.
I mean, he made a conscious choice, but he wasn't.
He made a conscious choice to let her die.
Yeah, but he didn't put her in that situation.
No, but he made a conscious choice to let her die because it benefited him.
Yeah, he could have saved her, but
moral gray area. Yeah. Not really. So but the Walter White one just felt the only part of this, the entire thing that felt a little bit masturbatory was the Walter White moment, because everyone loves Walter White. Here's a chance to see. There's the last chance we're going to get to see Walter White again. But the scene itself
Why do you think they chose that scene?
I have no idea. Like, it felt like
Do you remember where that scene is ultimately kind of placed?
in the series.
Yeah,
No, that might be why it didn't land for me.
I think it's the point at which they go out to the Disney. I think it's in season 2. Maybe it's in the end of season 1. I can't recall exactly, but no, I think it's the end of season 1, where they go out to the desert to do one big myth cookout, and they get stuck there, and they have to figure out how to like get the truck back up,
Yep.
and then they've got this problem now, which is that they've been away for far longer than they intended to be. Remember, Walter had to like put together, basically make a makeshift battery, and then he decides to pretend that he had like a fugue state where he, like was wandering the desert or something like that to explain why he was away for so long. But that point is that they made a lot of meth, and they suddenly had, they thought that they had made enough meth to kind of like basically be out of the game for good, And to me, the thing that was interesting there is Walter says one line at the end of it, which is that, you're kind of lucky. You didn't have to wait till you didn't have to wait to do something special with your life.
Yeah.
You didn't have to wait all this time to do something special with your life, which is basically this point at which Jesse kind of has the future ahead of him. Walter sees the end ahead of him. And that's kind of where the show ends as well, which is that Jesse has still got the future ahead of him.
But the show ended in that exact way. I didn't need that sort of spelt out with two characters that have already shown me that for four or five seasons or whatever. Like, it felt, that's why I sort of felt like it felt a little like masturbatory or not necessary. So I didn't actually know why. I mean, I think the show and this film hit that nail pretty hard on the head before they drug Walter White out of the flashback coffin and made him say it.
Right.
Like, and I don't want to come off as too harsh with this. I thoroughly enjoyed my time watching this thing.
Right.
Vince Gillian knows how to write offbeat, slightly just odd characters in the most enthralling and dangerous feeling way. Everyone from the guy in the vacuum store.
Oh, Robert Forster?
Yeah.
Oh, Robert Forster. Rest in peace, Robert Forster.
I know. To Todd, who is just is an off human being.
He's a sociopath.
A
psychopath.
He
was on the show as well.
True, but like the way that all of these characters are directed and written are just like, you never know. Even some of the newer characters or the one-off characters that were extended, the welders or whatever, like in this series and in this movie, the way characters are written and portrayed, you just never know what could happen, and it all makes sense, and it all feels dangerous. And that was something I really loved about Breaking Bad, and it's something that is very rare in a lot of things, and it was wonderful to see here. I also thought it was shot very nice. It had a lot of cinematic flex to it, but not in a boastful way, if I would say that. Like, when it did want to show off a cool shot, like him with the flashlight in his mouth, sort of panning around, looking through the apartment, and then like the above shot of like all of the different things, that all felt very Breaking Bad. But it didn't feel the need to like show off much like the show did. It knew what was important. It did the Bebop thing, in my opinion. It knew what scenes were important and what it wanted to display, and it did that, and it upped the ante when it wanted to. It's not a film I'm going to think about. Like, I thought about the show a lot. It's just this one I'm not going to go back and be like, oh, the meaning, because I knew the meaning. This was just like one more ride for me.
Okay.
What about you? I feel like I've been yammering for a bit.
So in the tradition of the show, the only podcast about movies, I think about the continuation of conversations that we've been having across many episodes. And the thing that I thought about a lot as I was watching this show.
Dick jokes.
Dick jokes, yes. Plenty of dick jokes. Not enough in the show. Not enough in El Camino, if you ask me. But the thing that I thought about a lot, other than dick jokes, was a conversation we had around another movie called Spider-Man Far From Home.
Spider-Man.
Do you know why I might have thought about that?
I don't know.
Okay. The conversation we had
I'm sensing a trap, though.
Oh, no, there's no trap.
Oh.
It's a trap for me.
Weird.
To bring it back up. Because the conversation we had around Spider-Man Far From Home was the conversation around necessary.
Okay.
And I felt Spider-Man Far From Home was unnecessary.
Sure.
I also think El Camino is unnecessary. I think it is a fairly unnecessary but entirely watchable and enjoyable experience. And I think what it is it's the way I kind of describe the movie is it's an extension cord. It gets you to the same place that you got to at the end of the show. It just extends out what it was
That makes
previously.
sense.
I think it's unnecessary in that it doesn't transform anything that we know. It doesn't. It doesn't stand on its own 2 feet as a film. It is an experience to be watched by Breaking Bad people who've watched the entire series of Breaking Bad. I think it would be near impossible to watch this without having done that. But I also think it's completely satisfying for under those parameters because I enjoyed the idea that we got a more detailed explanation of where Jesse is by the end of this, and it only comes towards the very end, which is the Jessica Ritter. What is her name? The Kristen Ritter, Jane's character flashback, where he says, like you should just go where destiny puts you, and she says, no, fuck that. I've been doing that for too long. You should choose where you want to go.
Yeah. And
the show kind of ended us with this sort of question mark about where is Jesse going to go? He's riding off into the sunset. He's broken free from the Nazis. He's kind of, he's gone somewhere. And this show is really about the choice he's making. Where do I go at this point, and how do I get to the place I want to get to? And like the best episodes of the show, where the show, Vince Gilligan is so really honed in on process, like the process of trying to find Todd's money, of identifying all the parameters for finding Todd's money, which is like the flashback of Todd having killed his maid because he put the money inside the encyclopedias, and now he's going to have to think of a new way to find, place his money. So now we know that Jesse knows that the money's in the house, but it's not in the encyclopedias anymore, and he's got to like tear the house apart. And it's like, we get kind of like the great sort of time lapses that Breaking Bad was so good at. And now he gets the money, but now he's got this additional complication of these cops who turn up who aren't cops, as it turns out, and they take half the money, and he's now $1,800 short, so he's got to go back and get it's all process. And I love that about the show. And I think one of the things that Vince Gilligan was really great at is this show never felt like it was in any way based on any part real life. It felt like this was all fictional characters that are much, much larger than life, but they all feel real within the world of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Like he is entirely invested in making the world as plausible and as believable as possible. Well, just a little side note, one thing that my wife was always really excited about, the science is very accurate on the show. They had a science advisor on the show, and all the experiments that Walter would do and all the things that he would talk about in terms of chemistry, all 100% accurate. And she would get so excited when she was watching it, and she'd be like, that's, and she would even identify what was happening. So in season 1, when they tried to dissolve the body, and he puts it in the tub, she was like, oh my God, that idiot. Like she knew exactly what was going on. So I think Vince Gilligan is entirely. I don't understand why Vince Gilligan isn't in every writer'sroom at this point, and why every TV show, every movie that's like trying to make franchisable IP, like why they aren't like just throwing money at Vince Gilligan. Like why isn't he the top of everyone's call list?
Maybe they are. He's just too expensive.
He should be.
Yeah,
but because if you watch this, you're like, that dude would be the first person I would call to see how we should do the DC extended universe.
Yeah,
this is this is the guy. But I do think that the film is unnecessary. I don't think it actually. You don't need to watch this movie. You don't need to have the experience of watching this movie. And if you just finished with the show, I think you would still feel the same way about the characters that you do. I think the reason this exists as it stands right now is that Vince Gilligan was asked by Netflix, would you want to make a short film or something? Would you want to make some additional content around Breaking Bad to celebrate its anniversary coming up? I think it was the 10th anniversary last year of the show airing. And he originally pitched this as a short film. He was going to do like just what happens to Jesse kind of after he breaks away, and
or an episode of television.
And then he just kept working on it and extended it out, and it became a feature. It just became this longer thing, and I think it's not quite in the world of being a feature film, although it is incredibly cinematic.
Yeah.
I think it is it's an extended episode to round out the series.
It is. It's not like, for instance, you know, the Firefly versus Serenity, like you can see the production value differences. Like the this is more the same production value, just longer in a different format.
We're not like X-Files where they, the show had ended and then they were like, we're going to do a movie now, and it's a whole new adventure.
So necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what I said when you said this in Far From Home, so I apologize if I'm retreading. But like, the truth is, none of the stuff we are talking about is necessary. I'm talking about films in like, you want to talk about necessary, and then we got to define what necessary is. I'm talking about like for life. Like things can be enriching or things can be valuable to you from a psychological standpoint, for instance. But and this is why I actually took away my initial thought of thinking that Joker was unnecessary. I don't think Joker is unnecessary. I thought it was inconsequential.
Right.
No, depending on what you define as necessary, but like necessary meaning like maybe for a living or maybe necessary for your time. I don't know. That's a personal decision.
That's kind of like a broader question about life, right? Like we're talking about movies.
But like, yeah, sure. But think about it this way, right? Like, so what would you say? So help me get through this. What is a necessary movie?
I'm not exactly sure what a necessary movie is, but I can tell you what an unnecessary movie is.
But there needs to be, based on the definitions, there kind of needs to be examples on each, or else the example of one kind of falls apart.
I think the thing is, necessary is an implied definition when a film works. It's a
shorthand
for what?
For the film working?
I think it's implied when a film works
that it's necessary.
That it's implicitly necessary, right? But when a film is unnecessary is when it doesn't work. And
I disagree with those,
and it has no reason to exist.
I disagree with those things because it has a lot of reasons to exist. Depending on how you want to think about the reasons for anything like this to exist. A, you want to do it totally utilitarian. It employed a lot of people. B, Terry Gilliam wanted to...
You could make pornography with the same reasoning.
Sure, but that doesn't mean... But pornography is not necessary. Necessary...
But I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I want to make sure that you're connecting it to the thing we're talking about.
Well, I will.
Okay.
But my point being is to call a film unnecessary, to call a piece of art unnecessary, does draw into question, well, then what is necessary? And I think I'm starting to glean back to Spider-Man Far From Home when I think my conceit was you have to sort of say necessary for you. Otherwise... Not for you, but when someone is saying if something is necessary or unnecessary, they have to say sort of specify that they mean. I mean, it could be implied, but that it is unnecessary for that person that is discussing it, because otherwise, it doesn't mean anything.
The phrase doesn't
phrase doesn't really mean anything because you can measure necessary a million different ways.
Right.
Not a million. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So for me, for El Camino. Mm-hmm. For me, the film was not necessary, I guess, because I didn't really... Overall, I was not up at night wondering what happened to these characters. But on that level, I guess it wasn't necessary. On the other side of things, when I knew it was coming out, and I was like, oh, cool. I was like, that's neat.
But you didn't know what it was at that point.
Well, I knew it was about Jesse Pinkman, and I knew it was a continuation of a series that I liked. So then, therefore, I was like, oh, great.
I think your point of when at which point you think something is necessary might be because I'm only speaking necessary post watching the film. So like if
you were saying so, but then in that case, are you talking about necessary in the sense of like worthwhile to your time?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's different from necessary.
Okay. But I apologize, but I felt like that was kind of implicit because we'd seen the movie.
No. I'm just saying,
it's impossible to kind of define something as unnecessary having not seen it.
Sure, but you're saying, but I think to not get into too much of a semantic rabbit hole by the end of this, you were saying that you feel like you watching this movie was kind of a waste of time because it didn't really do anything new or explore anything that you found terribly interesting or different.
El Camino or Spider-Man?
Either. I guess it doesn't matter.
There's a
well, then let's just stick with El Camino.
There's a difference in nuance between those two, which is what I wanted to discuss here.
Okay, well, that's fine. But the point that I'm making here is It's more about you feeling like your time has been wasted in one way or another.
Right.
So, but to say something is necessary or unnecessary puts that outside of, unless you put it in the context of unnecessary or necessary for you, puts it in a much broader context, which I just can't agree with because it's not true.
Okay, so I think what we're because you're opening the semantic argument up in sort of such a broad way that I think you're going to like lose the definition or lose the parameters of what is criticism.
Well, I think you're missing the parameters of what the word necessary means.
No, yeah, but then if to say, well, no, it's not unnecessary because that means it's only a perspective from one individual and therefore not valid.
I never said it wasn't valid. I'm just saying necessary.
Or only valid for that particular person means that it invalidates the idea of criticism in general or opinions in general?
Not at all, but welcome to this part of the segment of the podcast where we call words have meaning. Right. Again, I think a more accurate thing of what, at least I think, what you're trying to get across is after seeing this film, or after seeing a film that you would deem that you've called unnecessary, granted there are different areas depending on the films.
Okay.
It is based around the idea that you didn't gain anything from the experience of the time that you engaged in watching it.
Let me read to you Vince Gilligan talking about Breaking Bad.
Sure.
Asked by Rolling Stone what you felt about this movie existing relative to Breaking Bad. How it exists within the greater universe of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is that it fits together very well. But it's not necessary. Just as Better Call Saul is not necessary to Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is not necessary to Better Call Saul, and this movie is not necessary to either of them. Would you consider his opinion or the way he's using the phrase necessary invalid because necessary isn't being defined here?
Let's see. Yes and no. Sorry. The way that he is using it as far as like, is it necessary? Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Is it necessary to the story of Breaking Bad? No. He just said it. I agree with it. It's not necessary. We got it all. We enjoyed it. But then to say that the film itself, for instance, in reference to is it necessary for Breaking Bad that El Camino exists?
Right.
No, it is not. Right? But
is that by your definition not able to be said since it's an individual opinion?
No, but what he's saying, he's giving context to saying unnecessary.
Right.
Again, just like I said unnecessary to me, he's saying unnecessary to Breaking Bad. When you just say something is unnecessary without the context of what you are describing, it doesn't work.
Because opinions don't work?
Because you're using the word wrong, or you're not being clear. You're not being clear enough with your descriptor in using that word.
So
again,
hang on.
Let's not get into the semantics of it.
We are getting into the semantics of
Oh,
it because you've pushed us down this way.
Yes, I did this.
Okay. How would you phrase what I am saying?
I've said it a couple times, but I'll say it again. You were saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've offered this a couple times and you haven't. The act of you watching this, at the end of it, you felt like it wasted your time due to the fact it didn't offer you anything new to think about.
Okay.
That's a real...
Could I say that by just using the phrase it was unnecessary?
I'm saying I don't think it's accurate.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you getting across that... Because saying something is unnecessary, maybe this is
just
where
repeat the phrase that you just said again and take out every word that you just said and replace it with unnecessary.
For you, then it makes sense.
Okay.
Because do you see how you're literally...
what I think is happening here is that the word unnecessary kind of rubs you the wrong way because...
It should, because you're literally... When you say something is unnecessary, straight up with no context around what you're actually saying it with, you are saying intrinsically that it has zero value. Okay. Because it is if you're not putting the context.
I think is interesting here?
Okay, make sure.
I think is interesting here is that to you language has no nuance, right? Like I can't just say the word unnecessary and have implicit validity to my argument in it, right?
I think I prefer clarity. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right, but you're saying so I need to quantify every time I use the word unnecessary?
I think because it does have a context of basically saying
how would Vince
every
Gilligan...
time I'm answering, you are interrupting me.
Okay,
so I'm having a hard time sort of staying on the course. But so if you'd like to go to this quote, let's go to this quote. But when I respond to it, let's stick with the back and forth.
Okay. How would you? Is Vince Gilligan saying the incorrect usage of the word necessary here?
No, because he quantifies it with the question, I believe, that was asked of him is this film necessary for Breaking Bad?
No, the question was, how do you feel this movie exists relative to Breaking Bad?
Relative to Breaking Bad. Thank you. So therefore, like he has said, it is just like Better Call Saul is not necessary for Breaking Bad. El Camino is not necessary for either of them. He's not saying that the film itself is this unnecessary thing that has zero necessity, or else why would he be wasting his time?
Okay.
Right? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So he's putting unnecessary in context.
Right.
All I'm asking for is the context.
Okay, let me lay out the context for you. I watched Breaking Bad and I watched El Camino, and I think that the film is unnecessary because I've watched those shows and I don't think it advances the story. Is that enough?
For you, yeah.
Okay. For me,
yeah.
Okay, and then I'm not sure. What the semantic thing is really a hang up that you seem to have about like how words need to be placed. If you don't think that if you don't think that the word is necessary is correct, you can point that out. But to sort of suggest that language has no nuance and I need to explain every time I'm going to use the word necessary in order to use the word necessary, it seems like that implies that criticism needs to be like I need to write an entire essay before I use a word.
Not at all. You need to just be a little bit clearer about what you're saying, and I don't think that's terribly wrong.
Okay.
I don't get why
I will try to be as crystal clear as I can.
Sure.
El Camino is unnecessary.
That is not as clear as you can be.
Okay.
I've talked to you. You can be clearer.
Oh, really?
You have been. You've literally said the thing. All I'm saying, and this has gone on for far too long.
This is the reason I want to call this out is are you disagreeing with me?
No, because for me, I don't think that this film. Again, I'll rephrase what you're saying because we agree with the actual thing we are saying, just not the way we are saying it.
Okay.
I would say this thing ultimately. Actually, you know what? I might take it back because unnecessary means what you were saying is like you felt like it was a waste of time.
No, I don't think.
Sorry.
I don't think it's necessary in order to progress the story of Breaking Bad.
But did you enjoy your time watching it?
I enjoyed my time watching
it. So then that's
a nuance of language, which is what I said I would love to talk to you about in relation to Spider-Man, which is a film that I felt was unnecessary and I didn't enjoy my time watching it.
Okay.
Versus this, which is that I didn't think it was necessary, but I did enjoy my time watching it. That's a nuance of language.
So then define for me, I guess, what is necessary? I'm very confused.
So am I, really. I'm really confused by the insistence that we have to define every word in absolute clarity and we can't just have a conversation.
I've asked for one instance of a definition of a word in this case.
How long have we spent on this conversation?
Too long! I think everyone would agree that it's been going too long. Actually, here we go. This is how we'll do it.
Okay.
Write us in. Okay. onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Or tweet at us or whatever. This has gone on a little too long, and apologies for that, but it's never going to die. Do we think that in this, let's just ask a simple question, and then we ask people for sort of a backup of it.
Okay.
Is El Camino or a film that you enjoy but doesn't offer you a broader context on an idea necessary?
Mm-hmm.
Is that an okay question? Am I forgetting any stuff about that? Like, I'm actually interested in what other people think about this. I just think that for me, it's just it's a phrasing thing, and it's the way words are used,
right?
It's the way words are used.
Yeah. Okay, but the substance of what I've said, which I'm going to use the word unnecessary for because I think that's the most succinct way to do it.
I think we're just disagreeing on that.
Yeah,
I think we're just disagreeing on.
And that's what's weirding me out about this conversation is that like we've gone down this rabbit hole that
so
has nothing to do with...
we can't disagree on the use of a word now?
Well, now you can let me finish, which is I don't think we're actually having a conversation about the substance of what we're talking about.
We're not anymore.
We're having a conversation about the usage of a word, which you think is unclear. But your counteroffer is being like this entire sentence, which requires me to define a number of terms rather than just say the word.
Sometimes, sometimes maybe 5 words work better than 1 word does. Yeah, I'll die on that hill.
Okay.
That's it.
Substantively,
yes.
Do you now? And this is the question I wanted to ask
Yes.
was that I felt, and I kind of had a conversation point around this, which is that I
Okay.
think, which was that I didn't think Spider-Man Far From Home was
Right.
necessary because it didn't progress the story forward. But more importantly, the reason why I didn't think it worked is that it teased a better story than the one it actually told, and it felt and that made me consider, well, why aren't we just doing that story rather than the one we actually did, which I felt had no inherent value to it.
I mean,
versus and the nuance of the conversation I actually wanted to get into was that El Camino to me was an unnecessary extension of the Breaking Bad universe, but it was satisfying. The reason I think that was interesting is that it is a closure of this world. It is a closure of the story. It is not teasing any greater, broader story. It is saying this is the end of what it is. It doesn't need to exist because it's essentially just an extension of what we had previously seen before, but it is not suggesting that we've got more stories to tell within this world. It is just saying, here's this interesting little footnote to what you had previously seen. That's the substantive part of the conversation I kind of wanted to get into.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see, whether you had any thoughts on that. Not whether unnecessary or necessary were definitive terms.
Sure. The thing here is that Breaking Bad was already ended, and then this had an additional ending, which sort of didn't really add to that initial ending. Like, there were two endings; they're both kind of the same. We just get a little bit of clarity for Jesse if you cared that more enough about Jesse.
I meant the ending of the show versus the ending of El Camino, the movie.
I mean, they both ended the thing in the same way.
In exactly the same way.
Yeah, I mean, with the one exception, and I have a hard time sort of going into something where one line changes the word of an entire, or the meaning of an entire thing. I'm not talking about necessary anymore.
No,
I'm so
not,
sorry.
yeah.
I mean the line from Jane.
Okay.
Where about like I've been just going with the flow forever. I want to go somewhere that she chooses or whatever that is.
Make your own choices.
That does actually put more of a button on Jesse Pinkman's character as an ending than the show did. We got the shorthand of it. We definitely did, like, we can glean it sort of riding off into the sunset, but we know as a character, we know in life or even in the show that we've watched that it's probably not going to end well for Jesse because of all of the things that have happened.
In Alaska?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. In the show, like, he breaks through the thing and rides off and screams, but like
that's not how I read that ending at all. I read that ending as liberation, freedom. He's off.
Sure.
Freedom.
Oh no, yeah, but at the
And
same
the
time,
movie kinda
but if
plays
you
that
think,
out, right?
but what I'm saying is, not everything is an argument. I'm just trying to get at what I'm going through. The way that the show ends with Jesse, it's 100%. It's like liberating. He's free from this thing.
Yeah.
But if you think about it in the context of a story, sort of beyond that, I'm free. Jesse's still fucked. Like, and this movie works through that being fucked and then gets to a point where the entire series, Jesse has been just sort of going with the flow, and the flow most of the time is Walter White.
Right.
Now, the culmination of this is this one thing that this one person said in a flashback to him that now resonates because he is actually doing something on his own without being pressured by this outside incredible black hole of a force. So in that regard, I think that this does do something ever so slightly different. However, I think the reason why I was undulating on whether or not it's necessary or unnecessary in the context that you have put it out there. I don't think I personally can call it unnecessary because the act of me enjoying it makes it necessary, I guess.
That's a
little bit sloppy. I do admit
that's a weird connection of connecting two ideas in sort of an interesting way. I'm not certain I entirely follow you down that hole, but I think that's an interesting sort of point about it. My thing here is that I thoroughly enjoyed watching this. I thoroughly loved being in this world, which I think was your response to Spider-Man Far From Home, which is that you thoroughly enjoyed revisiting these characters.
Sure.
And being in that world again
in a slightly different way. Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas I kind of felt that this was enjoyable, but ultimately still kind of to me it's an extension cord of the movie of the show, which is that it is part and parcel of it. But the reason I can accept it and kind of enjoy its pleasures is that it is not trying to sell me on something else. It is of itself.
Right. And you've been very vocal about not enjoying that when films do that.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the MCU does not speak to you en masse, right? Like
it's particularly Spider-Man Far From Home.
Okay, yeah,
which I think is like a middling movie that felt like it was just aiming for a release date as opposed to actually having an interesting story to tell.
Sure, and again, that's totally fine. That's your opinion. I have a different one. It doesn't matter. The difference between it's weird we're comparing Spider-Man Far From Home and El Camino, but I think it does boil down to enjoyment of a thing that ultimately does not hurt or benefit its greater part.
Okay.
I personally enjoyed both of these films.
Right.
You enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
That just breaks down to how we like our narratives told or what narratives we enjoy being told.
But I felt both were unnecessary.
I know that's where we disagree. So
Right.
like that I mean, I can't do anything with
Do
that.
I need to define unnecessary again for you?
No, I mean actually, you've defined it quite. I know you know the definition.
Yeah.
You're just not being clear with your use of it.
Maybe, and here's just the potential.
Sure.
here. Maybe you get hung up on words as opposed to actually substance.
I think words are the only way we can convey substance. Okay. And I think it's unclear when we start using words as shorthand or just different ways to get across the way we think, especially when there could be more context needed.
Okay. We will agree to disagree.
That is fine.
On this one.
But write us in.
Write us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
I hope you enjoyed that 45-minute diatribe.
Yeah, unnecessary. I'd love for a linguistic expert to write us in.
Ooh, that'd be good. Do you know one?
I'm sure I could conjure a linguistic expert up at some point.
Conjure them with the magics of the internet. So this has been the only podcast about the film El Camino. Shahir, when you're not talking words, when can folks find you?
You can find me using 10 words instead of one at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, when you are not up to semantics, where can people find you?
Never. You can't, because that's what I'm doing all the time at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor with the number 4 PREZ on Instagram or MSK, Emperor MSK on Twitter. You can also follow the good works we are doing over on Extra Credits. We, I believe, are dropping the Mythology of Dragons. Does that come out next week? I think it does. And how actually history and a bunch of how the dragon myth has permeated throughout history, and why that's sort of one of those myths that like actually is everywhere, and how it's different based on like even things like politics. It's very interesting.
Have you read, there's a series of books called the Temerary series. Have you ever read those? By Naomi Novik.
No.
It's basically the idea that the Napoleonic Wars had dragons. So it retells historical wars, but certain sides had dragons.
Also, side note, doesn't come out for another week. I just realized that. It will come out. So sorry about that. Spoilers. But no, that sounds interesting too.
I'm just, like in terms of the topic you're talking about, which is dragons through history.
Yeah.
Dragons through mythology.
Dragons through history. Book, yeah. We'll be back next week with one of the 3 that won the poll.
So right now, the leader in the poll was definitely Parasite with 38%, followed by Jojo Rabbit and The Lighthouse. But in typical The Only Podcast About Movies fashion, we did El Camino. So should we just do these in reverse order?
Ooh.
Which means we do Jojo Rabbit and The Lighthouse and then followed by Parasite? Or should we do Parasite and then Lighthouse and then Jojo Rabbit and then come back to El Camino again just for the sake of it?
I think it might be time for
let's do the entire Breaking Bad series.
Another Twitter poll.
Another Twitter poll?
But include that as an option.
Should every episode from now on just be El Camino, since it came the lowest in the series? Parasite apparently is like, there's a lot of people writing about Parasite should be the contender for Best Picture this
Really?
year. Yeah. And not Best Foreign Film, but Best Picture, full stop.
I mean, we definitely got to talk about
My favorite thing.
Yeah.
This is my favorite thing that happened with Bong Joon-ho. So I'm a huge Bong Joon-ho fan. Bong Joon-ho was talking about the Oscars and was asked, what do you think about the chances, the Oscars like being, Parasite being pushed for the Oscars? And he said, it's really funny that South Korea has never even had a film in contention for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars. He says, really, when you look at it, the Oscars is a local competition and not an international one. And it was like the most dismissive but appropriately dismissive thing. It was like, oh, it's great that you have this little competition here. I don't really care.
Yeah.
And I was like,
That's
that's
pretty cool.
cool. That's cool.
I mean, him and the viewing public mostly.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll have you hear us next week for one of those. Maybe we'll do the Parasite of Jojo Rabbit's Lighthouse.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good mix.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.